Nice.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to the Tatiana Show. We are broadcasting to you live from beautiful New Jersey in my freshly painted apartment that is extremely messy. I'm not going to show it to you guys, but I see it in that little corner.
I was going to say.
I tried to adjust my lighting and I didn't do such a good job. So let's reposition ourselves a little bit. Look how nice and neat I am with my beautiful wall in the background. I'm super psyched to be here today. I've got one of my best friends, Lyn Ulbricht, on the show. I've also got Josh Shigala, my homeboy in Berlin from Volturo. Nice to see you guys. How's it going?
Good, good. It's always good to talk to you, Tatiana. We always have a good time.
It is wonderful.
Very good. Cool.
Great to see Josh. Haven't seen you in a long time, Josh.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
Yeah.
I've always across my computer screen comes some news about all the work that you're doing with Ross and bringing awareness to his plight. And you know, it's honestly, folks, if you haven't read or up about what the work that Lyn's doing, you know, she's an absolutely talented, beautiful, immutable, like the blockchain, courageous and contagious voice of freedom. It's definitely, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Wow, I've never been called immutable before. I'm going to have to write that one down.
The immutable Lyn Ulbricht, ladies and gentlemen.
Like the blockchain. All right. That's great.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Cool. So we're going to have Jeffrey. Sorry, guys, there's a little bit of a delay. So I think I'm not hearing everybody properly. I apologize if I'm talking over you, but we're going to have Jeffrey Tucker on the show in just a little while. But for now, maybe Lyn, you know, maybe you could give us a little bit of an update about what's been going on, because I wanted to share with everybody about all the news. So why don't you tell us the latest, I guess?
Sure. And there's big stuff. First of all, we do have a new website, so it's revamped, and I invite everybody to go there. And it has a lot of the updated information. But the big news for us is that the beginning of January, Ross and his legal team filed a petition to the Supreme Court. It's called a writ of certiorari, or a cert petition, and we're very hopeful that they'll hear it. We believe we'll have some really good amicus briefs joining it, which means friends of the court, where people who agree or think that it's important and the court should hear it write their own brief that goes along with the cert petition. And there's some very important issues involved that are broad-reaching. So, because that's what the Supreme Court does, they don't go through the facts of the case and the trial and all of that. They look at the broader issues and how this case will impact those. So that's the big news. Going in, one of the points is a Fourth Amendment argument, because it questions the way that the government tracked Ross and tracks other citizens with pen, register, and trace devices without using a warrant or probable cause. And this is a very important question in the digital age, because as it stands now, the government relies on what's called the third-party doctrine to basically track citizens of the United States without a warrant or probable cause, because they've given up their right to privacy, ostensibly because they have an IP address. So anyone who has an email address needs to know that the government can take that email address and track you. The other, and you know, this is a Fourth Amendment problem. The other issue is the sentencing, which people may or may not know. Ross was given double life plus 40 years without parole for all nonviolent charges associated with his role in the Silk Road website. And the Silk Road was a online marketplace that was designed to protect the privacy of its users. It was an open market, so it was product agnostic. The people exchanging goods and services decided what to buy and sell. So there were lots of things on it, from raw milk to illegal drugs. I mean, art, books, but illegal drugs were on there, mostly small amounts of marijuana exchanged for most of the time. And there were things that were prohibited because Ross doesn't believe in the use of force, believes everything should be voluntary and is peaceful. And so things like child pornography, for example, were prohibited by the administration of the site. Also, stolen property or assassinations or something, things like that were not voluntary. But otherwise, it was pretty open, and it was an experiment in free market exchange.
I remember when the debate was up about guns, where they should be allowed, and then they banned guns as well, which is quite interesting. I remember thinking, oh, that's an interesting thing, seen as America is so heavy on gun rights. So that was
and yet the media, I've seen it many times, calls it a gun site. They also say there was child porn. They say all this stuff about it. So please, people, don't believe everything you read because there's a lot of lies, and fake news is real. But in any case, so the idea was to have peaceful interactions, not do any harm to people. Granted, drugs can be harmful, but it was a free choice. So that was the philosophy. And for that, he is in prison for life.
And I've read many cases where people couldn't have access to pharmaceuticals, or they were way too expensive, and there was arbitrage opportunities where people were shipping pharmaceuticals from certain countries that had cheaper pharmaceuticals to countries that didn't, and using the Silk Road to have access to these life-saving medications. So, just to put it all as some sort of place to go and party and have these party drugs, when really it wasn't just that. It was really it was a way to arbitrage just generally buyers and sellers between substances that they voluntarily wanted to take.
Well, I've had people tell me that that's where they got their insulin, and now they can't get it because they can't afford it. Also, Kevin McKiernan, who's very much involved with the medical marijuana movement, said that there were many parents of children who had life-threatening seizures that would get their CBD oil on Silk Road and were very distressed when it was taken down. Their children's lives were in danger. So the only thing, though, that was allowed to be mentioned at trial and in front of the jury were dangerous drugs. They barely even mentioned marijuana. They, it was all these other, granted, dangerous drugs. So that was what the jury saw, and nothing else was allowed to be mentioned in terms of what was bought and sold on Silk Road.
Oh no! For me, it was such a blatant case of the state apparatus working as a conspiracy to basically scapegoat someone, because you had these trumped up murder for hire charges, which were obvious lies. Because I had been reading the writings of this so-called Dread Pirate Roberts at the time, and it was always about non-violence, and it seemed so uncharacteristic. And as soon as they came out with those charges, I remember thinking, hang on a minute. And he had a huge following, folks. The gentleman that was writing these blog posts had a massive following of people, fans, because it was a very articulate and wonderfully written pieces, and always about non-violence and the freedom of the human to do harm to himself or herself if they see fit. That's what they want to do. But not only that, it went on and on. But what was interesting was when that came out, all that following disappeared. All of a sudden, everyone dropped away because murder for hires. And I could imagine the talks right now. We've got to put some fake charges on there that are really awful, that everyone will distance themselves. And they did. And then those charges have been dropped.
Yeah,
but in
they
people's
never
minds,
charged them at trial for them at all. And I can't imagine any other reason than they didn't have proof. I mean, they're not doing it to be nice. They didn't charge him at trial. And that is actually one of the points in the petition of the Supreme Court, is that the judge, even though it wasn't charged at trial or ruled on by a jury, used it to justify this barbaric sentence that she gave Ross. And these are called judge found facts as opposed to jury found facts. And judges are not supposed to do that. They're supposed to rely on the jury. And it was never even brought up to be ruled on by the jury or to be, you know, voted on by the jury. And that's part of the United States Constitution. Yet this judge decided, well, even if it wasn't proven in court, I think it's true. I think it's true, so I'm going to use it. And this is a very dangerous thing. Yeah.
It's crazy. And I don't mean to bring up other countries.
That's bananas.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine just going off and being like, you're a traffic ticket, but you know, I heard that you were a bad boy. You're going to jail. Like,
exactly.
What kind of nonsense is that?
And the judge goes, like, well, I believe that. And,
why even have a trial? Why?
Well, why even have juries and trials? Is exactly right. And the thing is, the reason our founding fathers put in a jury trial was to protect against judges who decide on things on their own and any corruption or anything like that. They put in that check. And this is being run roughshod over. The trials in the United States, jury trials, are becoming extinct in terms of being anything but show trials.
Aren't the statistics like 97% of people don't even go to trial and that they plea out?
Mm-hmm. Well, they're pressured.
I don't even
They're saying if you go, if you go, you're going to lose. You're going to get worse punishment than if you plea now. And so they give in. I mean, over and over again. And by the way, I always want to point out, not only is it totally, everyone who knows Ross is like, there's no way he did that. There's no proof. There's no murder at all, even though the media will go, murder charges, murderer, murder. I'm like, who got murdered? No one. Even the alleged victim of the so-called planned murder, Curtis Green, has tweeted that he doesn't think Ross did this. He doesn't even think it. And he tweeted it.
Yeah. I mean, it was so obvious from day one.
It's like, you know.
It was basically to remove any safety net of human community around the guy.
Yeah. And becoming a hero. They didn't want him to be a hero. They didn't want him to become a poster boy for, you know, the drug war, you know, all that. Well, he is a poster boy for the drug war in a negative sense, but
yeah.
Digital drug war.
I watched a documentary yesterday that was on German.
Deep Web, or which one?
No, it was a German TV show about Silk Road, and it was about. It was actually about one of the top sellers on the Silk Road, and he went to prison. He got 3 years, and now he's out. Yeah, 3 years he got, and now he's out, and and he was the top #1 seller on the Silk Road here in. So
he actually sold drugs, unlike Ross.
Exactly. He sold drugs and all this stuff. Ross made a website. It's just. Is
that Jan Slomp? Is that his name, Jan Slomp? Is that it? Because I thought he was the top seller, but I don't know. I'd be interested to see that documentary. Anyway. Yeah.
It wasn't.
Yeah, the United States criminal justice system is terrifying, and it's really a national disgrace. And I've gotten to know people, the families, and the Ross, of course, he's in a maximum security prison with violent gangs. This is where they put their most violent people, short of the Supermax. And he's in there with these people. And even the prison people go, I've had guards say to me, he doesn't belong in here. And they've told him that. They've told his lawyer that. And yet there he is because of that sentence. And it's dangerous. It's a dangerous place to be. And he's a totally peaceful guy, and it's terrible. But there's a friend of his in there named Tony, who is in there for life for selling marijuana 15 years ago. He's done 15 years.
Oh,
no.
Life. Yes, life.
For marijuana?
For marijuana 15 years ago. And he has done 15 years, and he's still serving life. Ross is friends with him. He's a nice guy. He's a peaceful person. But, there he is. And it's in Colorado. The prison itself, the federal prison's in Colorado, of all things. It's really messed up. It's a human rights crisis, really, when you get to know the stories.
People do, you've been in this game for, what is it now? Years. And
4 years.
4 years. And I mean, at home, what can our listeners do if they're passionate about this to help the plight of your son?
Well, our new website has lots of ways to help, and we do need help because, I can't do everything. I mean, I've had a lot of help from people like Tatiana and others who care about this and you, but, I'm just me for the most part. Um, of course, we always need donations because it's expensive to fight the United States government. They seem to have unlimited resources, and it's expensive to go to the Supreme Court. But,
Mm.
we're determined. I can't let Ross die in a cage. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's just not acceptable. And also, I feel like it's a bigger fight here. It's not just him. He's a focal point, but it's so many people are being victimized. But also, if anybody has connections to powerful politicians or powerful people who have connections, if Ross could be pardoned, if he could be get some kind of commutation on this ridiculous sentence, people who have connections, that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
And also
and then there's other ways. Yeah, press too, and volunteers, spreading the word like you guys do, changing the narrative, counteracting the narrative. I remember, Josh, you helped me with a Bitcoin thing when we got hacked that time. And that was really great because it's like people were saying stuff about us that was totally wrong and we were able to clear it up, but I didn't even know what was going on, and so remember, so that was really good. And, just people helping us out in various ways. I think we're going to start a petition, restart. We did have one, kind of dropped it. Now we're going to start a new petition to possibly get signatures for a potential pardon at some point. Because we have to keep looking down the road. We can't count on the Supreme Court because it's hard to win in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So,
So how does that work with taxes and stuff when you get donations? Is it tax free for you guys or for the people donating? Is that?
Well, it's all totally separate from our personal income. We don't get any income from it at all. And all my work is volunteer. It's so it's a defense fund. Please don't ask me to explain to United States taxes. Taxation is theft. I know that. That's what I know about the taxes.
That's what
but yeah, I mean it's an LLC, a limited liability corporation defense fund. So it's and it's all transparent. It's all I'm really, Tatiana, I can tell you, I'm super careful about what goes where, and we get nothing in terms of our personal at all. And so our taxes are completely separate. And I don't know how it works honestly, I don't know. I can't tell you the tax rules there. So I'm not handling that part of things.
Yeah, you got good people behind you doing that stuff. No, I was just wondering because a lot of people love to donate to things, especially around tax time or earlier on.
Well, there is American Black Cross is a group that is a nonprofit that is tax exempt that supports political prisoners, and Ross is one of their projects. So people can donate to them, and in general, they help people like Ross, and it's tax deductible.
Wonderful. And how do you get buy data?
The link is on our site, by the way. The link to American Black Cross is on our site. But go ahead. Sorry.
Also freeross.org. You said on your website, but you didn't mention what it was.
That's
freeross.org.
Oh, I didn't.
That's
Thank you.
.org. So and I'm interested in you, Lyn, because you really, when I see someone of your energy to keep up and keep going and it's just for me it's phenomenal to see how much you travel and how much you do interviews and how much you talk and how much you push for not only Ross, your son, but also like you said, the greater cause.
Yeah, I could use a vacation. That's true. Tatiana will tell you that. But as I said before, I can't let Ross die in prison. I just can't. And so I can't really take, oh, well, I've done enough. I'm done. Sorry, Ross. Bye. And also, I feel like it is, once you see for yourself what's going on, it's really hard not to, it's like, you've taken the red pill. You can't do it. You can't. And so I'm trying more to take care of myself. And I don't travel nearly as much as Tatiana. Not nearly. But she's a lot of fun to travel with, though. We've had some good traveling adventures. But I try to, be careful about not extending too much, but at the same time, I can't stop really. I mean, I take it one day at a time. You have to take things one day at a time. I try not to get overwhelmed with fear and discouragement, because it can be very, very frightening and discouraging. But then I remember it's Ross, and he's such a great person, and it's such an injustice. It's so over the top, and there's so many others that I meet, and I see the kids when I go to visit. There's children crying because they have to be torn from their father, and I say to Ross, was that guy really, and he goes, no, it's like people make mistakes. Most of it's related to drugs. And I'm not saying very violent, threatening people society should be protected from. Okay, I get it. Although I even think those people over decades will mature and change potentially. But nonviolent people, it's just doing so much damage to so many inside the prison and outside. So I just can't stop doing what I'm doing.
Well, it is a much larger issue. And I mean, for me, I've gone to visit Ross in prison several times now. I was lucky to visit him in Colorado. I say lucky because there, at least we have these 6-hour blocks of time. So you can have visitors hours a day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But it was just really, really sad in there and terrible. And they're very nice at that prison compared to the New York prison, where maybe not everybody was so friendly. But it's almost like gross, because more grotesque, because there's this sheen of respectability and whatnot, and then there's an underbelly of just deep, dark human sadness. And that's where we're going to find the solution for a lot of these people who are criminals and who are maybe made a mistake. I mean, there's such a variance of like what those people are like, and they're all just shoved into this one place. And I don't know if their ability to better themselves is really there. I mean, some people, they take their situations, and they try and kind of improve upon how they are. But some people, they need a little bit of help. So to put them in a crappy environment doesn't exactly help them.
They call it correctional. They call it correctional, which I find ironic, because I think what happens with a lot of them is that it's really a criminal training program. There's people that go in there and they have to learn to survive, and they become much more criminal because they're being trained by other criminals. And to call it correctional in any regard, to me, is absurd. It's double.
Yeah, they're correcting it. They're giving them more skills. They're correcting them from getting in trouble next time.
How not to get caught. No, but narratives seem very, very skewed. Like once you get out of prison, it's almost impossible to get a job because of the records and everything that's spread around.
Yeah, absolutely. They're almost forced back into drug dealing or whatever because they can't make any money. Yeah.
And I see like the statistics for American prisons are so out of whack with the rest of the world.
They are. It's terrible. And we're the land of the free.
Very,
it's
very
horrible. It's terrible.
It's very, very ironic in a sad way.
Yeah. Lyn, can you tell us? No, I'm sorry. There's a little bit of a delay, so I don't mean to step on people. But Lyn, tell us a little bit about like the hopes for the case. I know that you have a really great lawyer. Maybe, any like what can people expect to happen right now? I mean, I'm really excited that you have such a wonderful legal team this time around, and they are really like the main lawyer. He's been very successful with different appeals. Can you give us a little bit of background on that, and like what are the next steps actually going to look like? Okay, there's something filed. We need to get some more amicus briefs. By the way, can people that are listening who are parts of large organizations, can they also submit? Like how does that work, I guess?
The amicus briefs, yes, our larger organizations can join a brief. They're due in 2 weeks, so it may be a little late to any, but it's not, it's actually not. If people want to approach our lawyers to write a brief, they can still. The lawyers are Williams and Connolly is the firm, which is one of the top firms in the United States. And the head of their Supreme Court practice is handling Ross's case. He's awesome. He's wonderful. The brief is very strong. He's also an incredibly nice person. He thinks it's a very important case. He thinks it's, he took it because he thinks it's a very important case. And so I think we're getting the best possible representation we can. So after the amici are filed, which is February 5th, is the deadline. And there's another case called Carpenter, which is a similar case, similar principles, but it's about a cell phone. And it's already been accepted by the Supreme Court, and it's going to be determined, ruled on probably in June. It's possible that they would group Ross with that. It's possible they would accept his case separately. It's possible they would remand it, which means send it back to the Second Circuit with their opinion, to take their opinion into account. A lot of what's at stake here is this thing called the third-party doctrine, which was basically put into place almost 40 years ago based on the dial telephone. It's saying that if you have a dial telephone, you have no expectation of privacy. You can't expect to be private about your phone number that you've dialed. That's it. Not content, anything like that. And the government has used that, and the courts have accepted that this applies now to all the information that we have on our phones and on our laptops. Well, it's the third-party doctrine. You can't expect privacy. Well, it's a big leap from a dial telephone phone number to the almost limitless personal and relevant information that you can get now off of our computers and our phones. And so one of the arguments is we need to get, this updated to where it's relevant, or we might as well just kiss the Fourth Amendment goodbye. Because right now the government doesn't need a warrant. Why bother to search somebody's house? I mean, you just get all this stuff electronically. So that's what the argument really is in Carpenter and in Ross's. And so we'll see what happens, but it's definitely an issue that's being brought forward to the court for them to say, okay, we're going to make 21st century law that's relevant and not be relying on something almost 4 decades old that is so irrelevant to what's going on now, really. So that's what's up for grabs. Also the sentencing, because what's happening apparently, and I didn't know this before Ross's case. I mean, I'm like, well, they can't use something they haven't brought to a jury. And his defense attorney at the time was like, oh yeah, they do that. Yeah, they do that. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Well, apparently they do. And it's common. And a lot of people Ross has talked to about his case in the prison say it applies to them. There's a lot of people in prison based on judge found facts, the same, not jury, judge thing. And the courts have been kind of grappling with it. And some justices like Scalia, for example, said this has gone on long enough. This is an offense to the Fourth Amendment. But then they haven't really ruled on it. So that could affect a lot of people if they take that aspect of it as well, the sentencing. So those are the things we're looking
but in
at.
the climate of what the United States is right now, people have varying opinions of Trump. He's such an anti-drug guy in a way, and then he's got Jeff Sessions, I guess. With all of our rights being taken away, it's like all the time, or being infringed upon, rather, because they're ours, not to be taken away. But I mean, is there any indication about how, like, if there is going to be that sort of shift back? I mean, I guess that's purely speculatory, right? But I just hope that we see a reverse in this country. Sometimes I feel like I'm watching TV when I see all these silly things that are going on, probably because there's a reality star running our country. But
I feel like I'm living in a TV show. But anyway, yeah, exactly. Well,
yeah, it's like I can't can't believe this is where we're coming to. I don't know how much longer, but it does seem like there's a definite pushback, and I'd love to see something different with the drug laws.
Let me just say something real
and
quick.
now I guess there's going to be, sure.
Well, I just think it's important for people to realize it is important to push back. And also, I think people need to realize the drug war, you don't have to be for drugs to be against the drug war. The drug war is not really about drugs. The drug war is about using that to expand government power and make a whole lot of money. It's extremely lucrative to the tune of, well, we've put in $1 trillion of taxpayer money now in over 45 years, and people are still doing drugs. They can't even keep drugs out of the prison, okay? There's plenty of drugs in the prison. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want to say that's why it's important, because we want to turn the tide. And I think we're at a tipping point in history. I do. I think we're at a crossroads. It's like, which way are we going to choose to go? And a lot of people need to wake up to that we're losing our freedom.
Yeah, I was talking to a gentleman who I've forgotten which country he was from, actually, which is, but he was talking specifically on the fact of what happens when you get the government that spies on you. And he was saying that, look, a lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter.
The government we have now?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, they say, a lot of people say, well, if I'm not doing anything, I don't care if they listen to my sports obsession. Mm-hmm. And what he said was, look, that's fine. But if the government has power to listen to everybody, it means they have the power to listen to the police, to the judges, and not only listen to them, but threaten them. So you can then threaten the judges with a certain thing. I know what you like in bed, and you might be embarrassed that the judge might be gay or whatever, and wants to hide that, or even anything. Might be into something weird. But that then is total control over a very, very important part of modern government is the courts and stuff. And that way, then you can start to stream down further and further and control people more and more. Little tiny facts. And it becomes such a downward spiral, and it becomes quicker and quicker until you get full-blown tyranny. Yeah. So anybody that thinks, it's fine, they're just listening to my sports core, don't see the bigger picture. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind when challenging corruption within, the Fourth Amendment or something like that.
That is a really, really good point, because that is an argument people make, and they trust the government not to expand, I guess. But that's such a good point, that they can use it any way they want. And it's a very important, it's a really good point. I'm going to remember that one too.
Remember that one.
That's good. That's really good.
So, so what's next for you now, Lyn, in terms of awareness? Where do we go from here? Are you doing any tours where people can hear you speak?
I have a few coming up. I'm going to go in a couple of weeks to Liberty Forum up in New Hampshire and do a talk there. That's part of the Free State Project. They've been great friends to Ross and our family. They're great, and it'll be fun because it's everybody's Liberty people, and they're always so much fun, and they're always such great people. So I really like that. And then the following weekend, Tatiana and I are both going to be at the Bitcoin Super Conference in Dallas, which that'll be very different, I'm sure, but I think it'll be interesting and fun. And then actually I've been invited by Reason Foundation to speak at it's a private event in Palm Beach in March, which I'm like very honored to go there. And that's the next thing. And there's a few things that I'm hoping to be able to speak at the rest of the year, but it's nothing else is scheduled. So, and I'm going to speak when I'm in Austin, because I'm on the way to Dallas. I'm going to speak at UT, and I'm going to be on InfoWars with David Knight, who I love. David Knight, he's great.
Yeah, they've been really big supporters.
He's publicly on his show called for Trump to commute Ross's sentence, and he compares it a lot to the Bundy situation. And someone else was calling it a digital version of the Bundy situation and case. And I think that's it's like all these different frontiers of fighting back, and we have to keep fighting or resisting. We have to. I mean, legally. I mean, obviously, legally. I'm not fomenting revolution here, but we do as citizens of the United States, but also people around the world. Like you're in Germany, but I've been told by people all over the world that where the United States goes influences everybody else, and so it matters what happens here. Yeah.
When the state sneezes, everyone catches a cold, and I think the thing is also, the states have a very wide reach globally as well, and they're extending that sort of session, just snapping.
God, I can't hear. He's frozen, but I really want to say something. I know what he's saying.
Oh, so I'm glad I'm glad I'm not the only one. I was like, I hate the
but
internet so much.
Ross knows people in prison who are not Americans and were not in the United States, who the Southern District of New York is big on this, seized them from their country or another country and brought them back to New York, tried them, and now we're paying to have them in prison.
Unbelievable.
This is what the United States is doing. They're seizing people in other countries who are not even American.
Never even came here.
What this points to is the blatant disassociation from incentives. Obviously, there's someone or groups making vast amount of money depending on how many more people they can get in prison. So how do you expand that? You head overseas.
Yeah, there's source of inventory over there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. It is. It's human trafficking, plain and simple. You make money off of human beings. You're trafficking in human beings. You are a human trafficker. That's what it's become.
Slavery. It's no different. I don't know. Yeah. And
talking of slavery, does Ross have to work in prison?
No, he's not required to. He spends most of his time now when he's not on perpetual lockdown, because that's one warden's way of handling a fight, is to lock everyone down, apparently. That's been going on since Thanksgiving. He can't get to the law library, but when he's not on lockdown, he's really working hard on his case. He was quite involved in the Supreme Court petition, actually, and conferring with his lawyers and putting input, and sometimes even disagreeing with them.
That's actually
so. It's go ahead. And
I'm just thinking, like, that's
incorporated what he said,
preventing him. But that's actually preventing him from defending himself.
That's a really good point, Tatiana. You're right. It is.
Right? Like, he shouldn't be allowed, like, they shouldn't be allowed to not provide him access to legal materials.
That's a really good point. I'm going to look into that, because that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is really true.
That's weird. Anyway, I mean, I think that there's all sorts of things that are sort of horrifying. But you guys, like, I remember, I know what happened with this, obviously, but I know that there was a big lockdown on Thanksgiving. So all these people who flew in from all over the place to come and visit their loved ones for Thanksgiving were not permitted to visit with them. I know that Callie did a little surprise this year.
That was Christmas. That was Christmas. But he also,
at Christmas time. No, at Christmas time, they were threatening to do that again, and then people came.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but you did get to see him.
Yes, thank goodness. But some people, we didn't come because it was up on the internet, no visiting, and at the last minute they changed it. But it was people had some. Ross knows a guy whose family saved to come see him from Wisconsin, and they stopped visiting that day. And so it's like heartbreaking what happens to these people and these families. It's not just the inmates who are punished; it's the families and the children, and it's horrendous. It is.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. We have our second guest on, Jeffrey Tucker. Jeffrey, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us once again. Jeffrey's actually been a very big supporter of Lyn, so we're going to do a segment with him, but I really wanted him to pop on and weigh in. Big supporter of the cause, and land. So I think that's kind of cool and influenced by Jeffrey's writings. Jeffrey, what's your, you want to weigh in on the latest? I don't know if you heard that Ross is appealing at the Supreme Court under a few different kind of things. Do you have any thoughts on the latest or on the case overall?
Well, I just want to say that Ross is far from forgotten. He's constantly in our minds. I was just at an event, I don't know, this last weekend or something, and everybody was talking about Ross. And I say that because, you know, these are very good times in crypto land. You know, there's a lot of people that have made a lot of money, a lot of newly minted happy lives, you know, and that's all good. And that's wonderful. It's great when people have been able to achieve this kind of things. But at the same time, with that glorious news is also the ever-present reality that a grave injustice has been done to a good friend, a brilliant innovator and colleague. And and I just want to say, not that we should not forget him, but that he is not forgotten, that he's constantly on our minds. And we're all very aware that there are two sides to this. You know, there's the glorious money that's being made on one hand. On the other hand, one of the great innovators in our space has been treated horribly and with horrible injustice. So the fight continues, and will be won.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And I feel like Jeffrey really understands Ross in a way when he said he's an idealist. And, you know, that's exactly right. Ross is an idealist. He remains an idealist, but that's what motivated him. Not to be a drug kingpin and make millions. That is not what motivates Ross. He's an idealist. And anyway, a peaceful idealist, I might add.
Yeah, I mean, Ross is all of us. You know, I mean, he's a stand-in for all of our hearts and all of our dreams, and we need to all remember that it could have been any one of us, and it just so happened that he was treated, you know, horribly, arbitrarily, and viciously and capriciously by a system that is unchecked and out of control, and he is bearing a terrible price and the weight of the burdens of this unjust system in a way that none of the rest of us are. So we should constantly keep this in mind. And in that sense, Ross is many ways, I mean, this has been going on since the ancient world, you know, the unjust imprisonment of good people. And you can see this in the great novels, Les Miserables and so on. But there's a real case in our presence today. I should also point out that many people have been extremely generous in his legal defense.
Oh, yes, very much. We wouldn't be here at the Supreme Court level without that. Absolutely.
That's true. And that's also another sign of injustice. I mean, it should not.
That's right. That's exactly true.
That people give, you know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars to this cause to get this man justice. I mean, right kind of system, justice should be free, you know?
Yeah.
So it's very bad, but it's the reality. And I think it's very good that people have stepped up.
Oh, yeah. We were so grateful for that.
Defense that we can afford. And again, I think that's right that people have done this, because, as I say, there has been so much money made in our sector and continues to be, you know, every day in our sector. And it's right that some portion of this should go to achieving something resembling a resolution to this situation. And I hope that you know, the system is very bad. And the criminal justice system in this country chews through souls, you know, on a daily basis, and we need long-term solutions to this. But at the very least, the beautiful thing about Ross's life right now is he gives us, you know, a person we can love, a person we can appreciate, that we can rally around and work towards. And I think he should continue to be our sign. It's like, until Ross is free, something is profoundly wrong. You know?
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Jeff,
That's beautiful as always.
It is. It was so eloquent.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking earlier about the greater prison system and how the American system is really incentivized a few groups of people to get as many souls into the system as possible. Talking economically, how can a prison system work where you do take dangerous criminals and protect society from them without building incentive structures to get as many people as possible because it's profitable?
Well,
how do you deal with that in free markets?
The answer to that question is interesting. The answer is I don't know. And the reason I don't know is that we don't have a market that works in order to provide the answers. I mean, the reason we have competitive markets is because they generate answers to difficult problems. We didn't know what search was going to look like on the internet. We didn't know what shoes would look like in the 19th century. You know, we didn't know how to build a mattress in 1750 and so on. We have markets to discover new ways. And one of the problems the criminal justice system presents is, you know, how do you come as close as possible to achieving justice for the guilty while not ensnaring the innocent? That is a market problem. And I would like to see a system evolve in a humane way to better realize better outcomes. The terrible thing about the criminal justice system is that it's literally not allowed to work, you know, because we're still trying to use these medieval system of justice.
Medieval.
True. You know, with widespread horrors that are not exactly hidden from the public view. I mean, you can go down to any county courthouse and sit for a day in the courtroom and watch what happens. You will be mortified. You'll be horrified. Just the lack of compassion, the way they just chew through human lives without regard to anything remotely resembling intention or justice or charity or anything else. It's a money-eating machine and a lives-eating machine. I mean, like in the case of Ross, I mean, there's every indication that he was just singled out.
Well, the guy who ran Silk Road 2.0 is free.
Yeah.
And it was bigger, and the government themselves called it equivalent. He's free. He's definitely being used as a example and a scapegoat. Yeah,
and the government treats people as if they're just objects, you know.
Yes.
And right. but Ross is a real human being, you know.
He is
a creative young man with a soul, and but you know, I spent, you know, a little bit of time in jail, and what happens to you is that you become how they treat you. You know, and what you realize very quickly is that you're a non-person in their eyes. You're just you happen to breathe. You happen to have a body. But beyond that, as far as the jailers are concerned, you're just taking up space, you know.
Oh, Ross said he's referred to as freight one time. The guy's like, I've got some freight here, got him upstairs. And he goes, what, I'm freight now?
Yeah.
You know, and other stuff like that. Yeah.
They don't need to give you the time of the day. Literally, you ask what time it is, they won't tell you. I mean, so
you're doing time. That's what they don't want you to know.
So and
not yet.
And it takes a heroic person to push through that and still sustain, you know, a sense of humanity, you know, because it's very easy. If you're treated like an animal, you tend to behave like one.
That's right.
Ross has maintained his dignity.
He has.
And his humane outlook on life and his essential warmth and his personality, despite the whole system trying to rob it from him, you know, and that's a level of heroism that you and I and most people will never be confronted with, will never be tested to that extent. And so he's been tested and continues to be every day, and keeps passing and passing and passing. I got a letter from him. I guess it was a month or two ago, and I was just so moved, you know, just to and I'd like to think that you know, if I were in a similar situation, I'd perform that way. I don't know, and I don't want to find out.
Yeah, no, you don't want to find out. No.
So it's a continuing inspiration. I mean, so in a strange way, Ross is working for the well-being of humanity from prison. He's continuing to inspire all of us. And I never give a speech on this topic, and I'm very optimistic about the future, but there's always, you know, it's like there's a screen of optimism, and then there's Ross up here in the corner smiling, but his presence is always there, you know.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all your support, Jeffrey. It really means a lot. Yeah. I think I'm going to transcribe all you just said and send it to him.
Please.
Absolutely.
It'll be very uplifting for him.
Well, I guess we'll probably wrap it up with Lyn and hear about Jeffrey's new endeavors. Yeah. But before we let you go, Lyn, where can we send people? What can people do? Do you have any action items for us right now?
Well, freeross.org has a lot of action items. So I would just recommend going there. And people can reach out to me as well. There's a way to do that. And so that's what I would say, just to keep it short. You know, there's lots of ways. You know, it's not all give money. There's lots of different ways.
Yeah, well, I think social media is a really easy way for people to help. You know, tell a friend, tell some people,
spread the word,
keep the word out there, and you know, keep an ear out for opportunities to potentially help in any way. You know, if it's through a connection, if it's through a press appearance, if it's through any of these other, you know, speaking opportunities, introductions. I hope that people will visit Lyn and maybe drop Ross a line. He always likes hearing from people. You can send him a card, any gifts or anything like that.
So he wouldn't feel cut off. We do need connections. So, I mean, a pardon is not out of the question in my mind, because, you know, you start looking at these. And so any connections like that, or connections to connections to connections, would really be good, as well as all the other things. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, great. Thank you very much for coming on, Lyn. It's so wonderful to see you every time. I get so inspired by your limitless energy to pursue the you know, well, the seemingly limitless
determination anyway.
Determination, you know, that you put into the fight for freedom and the fight for your son. And I all my wishes and hopes and dreams come, you know.
Let me just say really quickly before you go, Lyn. Everybody wants. Lots of people ask the question, "How can I be a good mom?" People should look to you.
Oh, thank you.
That's how.
Thank you.
That is an amazing mother. Absolutely.
Well, he's a son worth fighting for too. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Well,
for the record, he does get that. He knows.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, great to talk with you all, and I hope our paths cross again soon.
Thanks, Lyn. I'll see you down in Dallas, February 16th to the 18th. If everybody wants to come and see me and Lyn speaking, we're going to be at the Bitcoin Super Conference in Dallas. So that'll be really fun. And that's about it. Jeffrey, tell us what's going on with you. You had to
sign off. Bye.
Bye, Lyn. See you later.
Bye.
Jeffrey, tell us what's going on with you lately. You joined the American Institute of Economic Research. Is that what it is? AEIR. Oh, I got it. AIER.
It's a great honor for me. I'm thrilled. It's the American Institute for Economic Research was founded in 1933. And they just hired me as a director of research, and it's been such a pleasure working with them. And it's located in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and it's, you know, it's an idyllic castle, you know, on the hill, you know, with 50 apartments, and you know, it's a beautiful place with endless cubby holes and a glorious attached office with a top professional staff. They've been pioneers in the realm of economic research for so long. But you know, what's interesting about it, Tatiana, is that the American Institute was founded in 1933, and sometimes people don't understand the history here, but I mean, basically it goes like this. I mean, the Great Depression hits, right? There was this guy named E.C. Harwood, who was a professor at MIT, and he had written a book on the boom and bust cycle that came out in 1928. And he said, look, disaster is coming. We're facing this credit bubble. And so the stock market collapsed. FDR was elected in 1932. In 1933, he comes into office. The very first thing he does is he shuts the banks. Like, the banks are closed. Okay, your money is in the bank, you know, but now you can't get to your money. So he's instantaneously robbed all of Americans of access to their funds. So, but then the banks reopen, and now you can get your funds. But now there's a new requirement that you have to turn in gold. You can't redeem your dollars for gold, and any gold you own, you have to give it back to. You have to sell it back to the bank, and so you have to turn it back to the government. So this actually happened, and if you didn't do that, there's criminal penalties of $10,000, which I think converts in today's dollars to like $100,000 or something, and there were dozens and dozens of prosecutions and sting operations all over the country to take people's gold. And then a third thing happened. They devalued the dollar from 1/20th of an ounce to 1/35th of an ounce. So they immediately robbed everybody of their money. Now, this happened in the United States of America in 1933. At this point, E.C. Harwood said, you know what? If you can't control your wealth, if the government can just take your savings and pillage you, you are not free. And at some point, we have to stand up and fight this with good economics and serious financial strategies and a desire to survive. So he established the American Institute for Economic Research, you know, as an alternative to this. And it became independent. It wasn't part of a university or a government, because he knew the universities and the governments was completely corrupt. And so he wanted an independent institute. So, and thus was born this glorious institution, which today is gigantic and independent and glorious. And I'm just thrilled, you know. So here I am. I didn't know E.C. Harwood. I wasn't born back. You know, I didn't live through all that mess. But the work they did back then now benefits us today, and it benefits me personally today. And I'm thrilled to be like, you know, whatever, third, fourth generation representing this great cause. So it's awesome.
Amazing story, Jeffrey. I've got a little graph here for those people that are interested. At 1933, exactly there, you see this huge drop in the purchasing power of the US dollar as this confiscation of gold starts happening, and this decoupling of gold from the US dollar until completely decoupling in 1971.
That's right.
Internationally. But yeah, what an amazing year. And also hit
Josh, yeah, Josh, we can't hear you. Yeah, welcome to the internet, everybody.
But you know what's interesting about the analogy here with gold. So today, AIER, and this is the reason they hired me, is doing massive amounts of research on cryptocurrency and the implications for banking, for wealth ownership, for prosperity, you know, all these things. And so it's been very easy to segue from AIER being a champion of gold to being a champion of the rights of individuals to own and control their own money. So it just makes sense, you know. It just makes sense that AIER would be, you know, a world center of research and writing on this topic, because it's always been about the right of people to own and control their own wealth, and distrust of the banks. You know, one of the things that's really interesting, because as I got curious about the founding of AIER. So, you know, we need to understand that, you know, we look at that chart. What FDR intended to do was generate a massive inflation in America, because they believed that if you could raise prices, that it would get us out of the Depression, which is a stupid idea, but they believed it. So the purpose of the devaluation and the purpose of the gold confiscation and so on was to raise prices. It didn't work, and the question is, well, why didn't it work? And the answer is that that people began to not trust banks. I mean, after you close the banks, after you confiscate gold, after you devalue the dollar, nobody's going to trust you anymore. So Americans started burying their money in their mattresses, and they started burying their gold, underground in the backyard. And the velocity of money, the pace at which it changes hands, plummeted. It fell off a cliff, and suddenly all of America became hodlers. That's what happened.
Amazing.
The whole country became hodlers, and this lasted from it started in 1930. But it really accelerated in 1933. It lasted throughout the rest of the 1930s. And then, of course, we had World War II, in which, all the men were drafted and all the prices were controlled and all life was hell. And you couldn't even buy freaking flour at the store without a coupon. I mean, it became like a Stalinist economy. And, of course, the hodler was like, we're super in at that point. They're like, all right, we're going to hodl forever. Well, the war finally ends and life becomes a little more normalized, and so by 1948, 1949, it seems safe again now to start investing, to start maybe hiring, to having children, that's where the baby boomers were born and so on. And all these huddled dollars are coming online. So you have 15 years of savings, or deferred consumption suddenly shoved into new investment, capital investment, building the future. So all the economists at the time predicted, they said, after World War II, we're going to get millions of soldiers returning from Europe. We're going to have a Great Depression. It's going to be a disaster because what are we going to do with all these new labor resources? There's going to be mass unemployment. And none of it happened. And the reason it didn't happen is because the hodlers and the hoarders and 15 years of savings suddenly came online. And throughout the 1950s, we saw, in one decade, the greatest economic boom, basically in the history of humanity, suddenly came about, and that's because of all the savings that have been built up in the 1930s. So it was the hodlers that saved civilization, basically, after World War II. And
nowadays we don't have any hodlers in a fiat country. I mean, really, most people I know live paycheck from paycheck. They cannot save, and when they do save, it gets devalued, so they don't bother.
Right.
But what I find is this. What I find so beautiful about living now is this renaissance in the understanding and the.
That's a really riveting point. Sorry, the internet just died. He's like, what's so great about it is.
Yeah, it just stopped, right?
Jeffrey, so I'm listening to this. And it seems like there's been just so much corruption. I mean, yeah, the crypto thing makes me feel like there's hope, but now even crypto seems to be getting hijacked from the mainstream. Are you hopeful with this history of mankind brutally oppressing one another? I mean, is this going to be a turning point? I'm sure you're going to say yes, but tell me why.
You're not going to say yes. And as for the corruption in the crypto world, No,
not the corruption in the crypto world, in the real world.
Okay.
Crypto world also has corruption, but on the massive scale. I mean, Ross's case, like all these bad things we keep finding out about every freaking 5 minutes.
If we could survive the 1930s and World War II, we can survive this. I mean, we don't. It's nothing like that. I mean, okay. You have to imagine yourself in 1930, and you get a note from the government that says, if you have gold, you got to take it into the bank now or face criminal prosecution. I mean, we don't face anything like that. In World War II, you couldn't buy corn, you couldn't buy flour, you couldn't buy meat, you couldn't buy lard without a coupon from the government. I mean, you want to talk about oppression?
Well, there's still time. But we could get to that. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think everything's breaking down. I mean, I have enjoyed the last week so much. I mean, they shut down the government, and it was so funny. They shut it down on Thursday night, Friday morning, something like that. And then Monday, and then it was a weekend, so nobody cared. And then Monday came, and a whole day went by. The markets didn't react at all, like at all. It was one big yawn. Like, you shut down the fuck it. I mean, so Tuesday comes, and all the politicians are like, we got a problem. We shut down the world's most important, big, and powerful government, the indispensable institution that keeps the country and the world together. Nobody gave a shit. So this is a problem. We better open like now, because if this keeps going, people are going to figure out that this thing doesn't even matter. All right. So, I mean, this is how bad it's gotten. Also, you can't forget, in 1962, a poll was taken. Do you have trust in the federal government to do the right thing? 60% of the public said yes. That same poll today, 18%. I mean, that is a...
Yeah, I like seeing them crumble.
I mean, that is a...
I guess...
you can't like run an enterprise viably over the long term that has 18% public support. I mean, come on. This is getting ridiculous. I don't know how far it's going to fall, but it's going to fall and fall and fall. And I don't quote me on this, but because I mean it a little bit sarcastically and ironically, but God bless Donald Trump, because it's like
he's trolling everybody. It's awesome.
He's doing everything possible to discredit, everything about executive state rule and the bureaucracies. The bureaucrats are fleeing Washington. We have lost 20,000 people out of the permanent bureaucracy in DC over the last 12 months because they're so demoralized, and they don't even like showing up to work, and they're like, screw it, I'll go work at Chipotle. I mean,
that's sort of their qualifications with them. Okay, I'm a little bit cheered up. I guess my frustration is also like with the media and people thinking that certain things function when they don't. I like seeing the cookie crumble, or like the house of cards kind of come down, because I don't know. I mean, you think like, I don't know. Have you ever tried to, place like say somebody's trying to harass you or threaten you, and you go to the police department and they're like, oh, we can't really help you with that. We can't help you until they actually kill you. It's like, listen, I've been watching TV for a long time and they always help. You're not doing it right. And like, you have this complete disconnect from reality of what these services provide versus what you see.
You're talking about the media. I mean, the distrust in government is paralleled perfectly with the distrust in media, and you can understand why. I mean, I have a Google Home Assistant that I listen to every morning, and I have to listen to this blather. And, every day it's nothing but Trump hate, revenge porn, and, God knows what. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Why are these people still on the air? Yeah. I hate the alt-right. I don't need to wield my anti-alt-right credentials in front of you. I have a whole book against these guys. But when you have to go to Breitbart to find out like actual news, that's pathetic, and yet that's what I went to Breitbart because I just can't bear it. And I used to love the New York Times. Now it's just like, I don't know what you call it, if fake news applies, I don't know what, but I went to Breitbart and I found out that last Thursday, Donald Trump held a rally in Philadelphia that filled up an entire stadium, and he gave an on-point message. That was a brilliant speech that detailed all the economic accomplishments of this government. I wouldn't say accomplishments of the government; it's actually accomplishments of deregulation and tax cuts. That have generated record low unemployment among blacks and women and all demographics. We've got a breakout after 10 years of recession. Suddenly, the American economy is growing again, not because of anything the government's done, but because the government's doing less than it ever has before. And his message was on point and interesting, and all reports that I read were that it was a brilliant talk. Okay, and I am not an apologist for this guy, but the point is, when you have the president of the United States filling up an entire stadium full of people and giving an on-point message, and it's not even reported, not even reported. in the Washington Post and the New York Times. What are we talking about here? I mean, if that had been Obama,
shitholes, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, if that had been Obama, we would have seen a full transcript, you know, on the front page of the New York Times. They don't even mention the existence of this rally. You know, I mean, that is a level of corruption in the press. I don't even know what. I mean, they've become a full-time party organ. You know, it's despicable. And again, I am not an apologist for Trump. I despise the Trump movement, but I got to tell you, the net effect of this presidency has been good for this country, and only, not because of what it's done, but because it's what it's not done. I mean, just the declining to enforce the regulation, reducing the corporate tax rate, and so on. These are extraordinary achievements. But you'd think that the national press would have some sense of obligation to their readers to give some, you know, minimum account of what's going on in this country. But no, every day it's just propaganda. And it's
it becomes easier for press just to stick people in the White House. It's the same in Australia. I worked in the news media a long time, and it's just much cheaper. Instead of sending journalists onto adventures to try to dig up a good story, they just stick them in the in Parliament and get them to repeat exactly what the politicians say. So they become a mouthpiece, basically. Right. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the government's doing better now that the government was shut down. We saw the same thing in Spain. Spain has had a dysfunctional government or a lack of government for a long time, where a truly formed government, and their unemployment rate dropped a couple of percentages during that time. It's just there's constant examples of the fact that the state apparatus ends up just mucking about and causing more harm than good over and over again, and we really see this playing out. So it's great to see evidence happening in the home of the free in the States.
And let me present some evidence to that effect, because we've gone through about 40 years of government shutdowns, and they happen periodically, right? So we have enough of a track record to know what happens when the government shuts down. So in the early 1970s, under Ford, and then later under Carter, when the government shut down, the stock market would fall 3 and 4%. Typically negative. That began to turn with Obama. When the government, when the Obama government would shut down, the stock market would go up and up. And the most recent shutdown had an astronomical increase. Like the financial markets went up like 4%. Okay, so and now, you know, we have this ridiculous bull market going on right now. The government shut down. It was just another excuse to buy. You know, so it was so funny. So now you have financial markets like literally paying no attention. You know, like the fact that the federal government of the United States, the world's most imperial power, you know, shuttered its doors, was about as relevant to the financial markets as my next door neighbor's new welcome mat. I mean, it just had no impact whatsoever. I mean, that's kind of an extraordinary realization. I mean, you know, the elite opinion in this country has been all about defending what's basically an illusion, which is that government really is the thing that's holding the world together. It's not true. And this illusion is being exposed, you know, on a daily basis at an increasing level, day by day. And I just don't see how this enterprise can be viable in the future. I just really don't.
Yeah, interesting. I see, you know, more and more these huge companies like Google and Amazon are becoming so massive and powerful that, and now we have the privatization of money and back to an asset-based currency in terms of rare numbers, in terms of Bitcoin and crypto, that we're seeing more and more the total uselessness of this state function.
Exactly.
Really,
well, money was the last one to go, because I mean, we've gone through about 200 years in which government has monopolized money, and now now it's no longer a thing, and we've seen that it can happen in the private sector. And I think it really does raise an important question. Like, what do we need these people for? What exactly are they doing? I mean, the case of Ross shows they're not giving us justice. The case of Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies show that they can't give us money. They're not doing that well. They don't do anything well. So, I mean, at some point we're going to see, I think, like a paradigm shift, and it's exciting to live through. I must say, I'm thrilled by it. Let me just tell you quickly. I'm going to Austin, I guess, on Thursday, and for a conference I organized, actually, and Roger Ver was going to debate Trace Mayer on the question of the block size, right? And Trace, if you know Trace, he's a fierce debater, right? So everybody was really signed up for this. Roger had to cancel for personal reasons, so they needed somebody to go up against Trace.
Oh, really? Wow.
You're going to do it? Wait, are you still pro Bitcoin Cash? Are you pro Bitcoin Cash over regular Bitcoin?
You know, Tatiana, I have to do like a mental inventory over this in my own mind. I've been leaning pro BCH for a while. Mostly my position is I'm in favor of competition, you know, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure that if I had been, you know, a voting member of Bitcoin Core since 2015, I would have raised the block size. I think it needed to be raised. I don't see any reason for it not to have been raised. And I think that the creation of BCH was actually a brave and bold decision that's actually helped a ton of people get out from under these high fees and slow transaction time. So, you know, so I don't want to make a blanket statement, oh, I'm a partisan of BCH, but I can make a case for it. And I think I'm the one to do it. So
great. Well, you know, the funny thing is,
I think this is going to be interesting.
We need to you know, wrap up. I know that, but you've just opened up a can of you know, interesting.
I know, guys. I have my painter coming in like 2 seconds. He was supposed to be here 20 minutes ago, but I know it's just getting juicy.
Well, I just love the fact that, you know, you're seeing, well, Roger Ver is heavy on the economics theory side, and so are you, obviously. And so it's interesting to see people that are on a technical level saying, no, Lightning networks and second layer tier networks are better. And then the economists saying, hang on, or the businessmen as well, saying, no, look, we need to raise it a little bit so we have some runway, and then we can play with all this stuff. That's great. But you know, we're seeing as we run an exchange, Bitcoin Gold Exchange, and we're seeing a lot of partners and stuff really having troubles with these high fees, because it's ruining a lot of business cases that were built on this promise of low fees, instant transfer, all these things. And so it's a very, very difficult stage for us as a Bitcoin business to deal and try to wait for Lightning Network to come along. It's really, really tricky.
It's always wait for Lightning networks, and I'm not even entirely sure about Lightning. Well, this is a whole thing. We can do another show on it.
Yeah. I'd love to do another show on Lightning, because I also see some very, very difficult economic problems with Lightning Network in terms of the economics of it. So it'd be great to have you back on the show and to talk about that.
Happy to. I love this topic.
Great. Excellent. Well, we'll have to do it soon, guys. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Jeffrey. It's always nice to see you. Wait. Don't go so fast. Okay. I want to know two things. You told me the other day about some sort of, I can ask you about that later. I want to know where people can read your writing and how people can catch up with you.
Head over to AIER, American Institute for Economic Research. My entire archive is there. I write every day except for the last 3 days, during which time I had the flu. So I'm writing like with a frenzy right now to catch up. And so I have a new article on the government shutdown, which you don't need to read because I already talked about it on the show. But anyway, support AIER.
I think it's really funny, though. I want to hear about how ineffective their threats are. It's going to shut down. We're like, yeah, who cares? It's so good. That's so funny. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We're due for a little Skype catch up, I hope soon. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks to Lyn Ulbricht. Please go to freeross.org. Also, people can go to cryptomediahub.com if they want to find out about my marketing company for crypto companies. And I don't know, joshvoltro.com. I think that's it. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Peace out.